UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, it is Petrie here with you now for the next 3 hours, and coming up at midnight it is the hour-long phone-in, so it's your opportunity to talk back, and I'd very much like you to do that, because we've talked about domestic abuse before on this programme, but not for a long time, and it is something that is a real issue for me. I've been in an abusive relationship, although not physically, but very much abusive nonetheless. And it is something that I'm aware of. I'm aware that other people are suffering with this. Now look, when you're looking at the numbers, it is very easy to see that women are the majority of people who are abused. They also tend to be the ones that are the most injured, and they're the ones that die. And that is simply because of the physical differences between men and women, right? So if a woman is abusing a man, it's more likely to be emotional. It's more likely to be really aggressive in terms of verbal, and it can be physical. Of course it can be physical, but it is nonetheless, it is women who are the majority of cases. So I do acknowledge that men are also domestically abused, but let us not forget that women are tragically in the majority on this issue. So I want to talk about why it is that domestic abuse is on the rise. Why is it that people think that it is okay to take out life's frustrations on their spouse, on their partner? Has it ever happened to you? Have you ever raised your hand to your partner and you are man enough or woman enough to give me a call and explain to me why it is you think you crossed that line? Now, domestic abuse is considered to be anyone over the age of 16 who is abused in a domestic setting. As I said, the numbers bear out that women are the majority of these cases, and 1 woman a week will die at the hands of either her ex-partner or her current partner. So it is interesting to me that Scotland now is looking into having a register for offenders, for domestic abusers. So it would work in a similar way to the sex offenders register, where known domestic abusers would be put on this list. They would have to check in with police. Their passport number would have to be given over, so if they travel anywhere, that it is known. Do you think that that is the right move to be making? I mean, I know from my own situation that my partner at the time, he said to me, look, I've never behaved like this with another woman, and I never would. It's just you. But I suspect they all say that, don't they? So would it be fair to put him, for example, on a register when clearly I was the reason he was a domestic abuser? I don't know. I don't believe that is the case. But so this has got issues with it. But on the whole, domestic abuse is not taken seriously in this country. We know it's not taken seriously in this country. Recommendations that are made every time a woman dies, they go, oh, we've learned our lessons. They're not applied. You know, they come up with recommendations that say this is what we should do, and they're not even done. So what's the point? Why is domestic abuse taken so lightly in this country when we see a huge number of women and men who are being brutalised in their own homes, and indeed sometimes even killed. So that's what we're going to talk about at midnight. So I do hope that you join in the conversation. The number you're going to need is 0344 499 1000, and you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Coming up before that, we have John Boothman, our political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, to go through the newspapers for Thursday. We're also going to be looking at entertainment news with Beverly Lyons and checking out some new podcasts with Vicky Mitsy. So all of that is coming up. But let me tell you more about this new bill. The new bill has been put forward by a member of the Scottish Parliament, Pam McGosal, is currently under review for a new law that would create that register for domestic abusers. Holyrood's Criminal Justice Committee is looking at the Prevention of Domestic Abuse Scotland bill that, if turned into law, would introduce notification requirements for certain perpetrators convicted of domestic abuse offences, like the current sex offenders register. The bill would also require schools to educate students on domestic abuse, place a data collection duty on Police Scotland, the Crown Office and the Procurer Fiscal Service, and charities working with victims. Meanwhile, in England and Wales, a report by the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, Nicole Jacobs, found that the government is not learning lessons from deaths of domestic abuse victims. So will the Scottish bill make any difference? And what more actually needs to be done? And I guess that basic question is, what creates a domestic abuser, is something that I bet a lot of people wish could be answered succinctly. Well, joining me now is Thomas Leonard Ross, who is King's Counsel of Benchmark Advocates in Glasgow. Thomas, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Good evening.
This bill being put forward in Scotland, are there any people who think this wouldn't work or wouldn't be a good idea?
Yeah, well, certainly when I publicly supported the bill, some people did come back and say, well, I don't see what difference this would make. This would be a waste of time. But, you know, I think that it's such a problem, and so many women are suffering because of domestic violence. I think it's worth a try. You know, I don't see what possible harm could come from it. It might be some wife beaters will be inconvenienced a wee bit. I don't care about that. You know, I think it's worth a try.
I mean, are there any nuances to domestic abuse that could make it difficult to put people on this register? You know, for example, I mean, there's absolutely no excuses. As I declared, I've been in a domestically abusive relationship, and was it 4 out of 5 women have been in their lifetimes. But it is. Are there nuances of people say, well, hang on a minute, he's not usually like that, or this isn't a reflection of him as a person, this was a mental health breakdown, or this was, I don't know, he'd lost his job, so he wasn't thinking. Do you see what I mean? This is how these abusers get away without prison sentences, by the way. Well, but are there nuances that should be listened to?
Well, the bill in its current form, they wouldn't trigger the requirement to go on the register unless you were sentenced to 12 months imprisonment. So the sort of psychological abuse that you spoke of earlier from your own personal appearance would never, ever attract 12 months imprisonment. So an individual of that type wouldn't go on the register. That wasn't my suggestion. I might say I might be more inclined to restrict it to any form of domestic violence, because violence is quite easy to define and is defined in other contexts in the law. And I might be in favour of starting with domestic violence of whatever level and whatever the punishment to test it out before extending it beyond violence.
So it would only be physical violence to begin with, in your view?
That's not what the bill says, but that would be an alternative to making the requirement 12 months imprisonment, because quite a lot of bad domestic abuse can be committed without attracting a sentence of 12 months imprisonment. So quite a lot of violent men might get under the radar if they were sentenced to 9 months imprisonment or 10 months imprisonment. I mean, it needs to be quite a bad offence these days to get 10 imprisonment. But as the bill stands, I don't think you would have to be on the register for 10 months imprisonment.
A lot of people, though, who have suffered with different forms of domestic abuse in terms of like financial abuse domestically, the kind of abuse that I went through, where I was, deprived of food, for example, because, if I was thinner, things would be better. That kind of behaviour, that is still nonetheless a violent act, that, in my view. But you would want to differentiate that.
It's not a violent act. No, it's not a violent act. So, I mean, I think at the moment we don't have any register, and Pam Gosel sadly has not been given a great deal of support by our fellow MSPs. So really what I'm saying is that I would rather have some form of register than no form of register, and the easier it is to make people understand why you're doing it, then the more likely it is to happen. And in other words, what I'm saying is, the wider the debate about whether people really deserve to go on it, the less likely it is we'll ever have one. Whereas if we see people who beat up their wives and cause them injuries, of course, should be on a register, then as a starting point, it's more likely, I think, to be supported by people, because otherwise people will put that argument forward. Well, what if I'm just not speaking to my wife? Is that domestic abuse? Am I going on the register for that? And some people will have a difficulty with that, which they wouldn't have if it was restricted to physical violence. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying the type of abuse that you're speaking of is not serious. I'm just saying we're trying to get from a situation where there is no register to a register, and then we can build from that. And I think it's much more likely to be supported if we're very specific as to who will go on it.
Yeah, I fully take your point. The other question is, and I guess this has been raised as well, you already sort of mentioned it, is saying, well, what difference will this make? Because this appears to be closing the stable door after the horse has bolted. Yeah. Right. The issue with domestic violence is surely in prevention and understanding of what creates it.
Yeah, I mean, I come at this issue as somebody who practices in the High Court, which would be the Crown Court in England and Wales. So I'm seeing examples where women are killed, women are beaten to death by their partners, or almost beaten to death, and there's a lot of that in Scotland. So it's got to the stage where we know that some people start with sort of low-level violence with one partner, and then they go into another partner, and it becomes more serious, and eventually somebody dies. There's many examples in Scotland. I'm sure there are many in England and Wales. And my thinking is, well, if we get them at the stage when the violence is less serious, and get them on the register with an incentive to get off the register if they go for counselling and education. It might be the case that although the stable door has closed so far as the less serious violence is concerned, if you get in there at that stage and change behaviour, then it may be you might save some lives. That's my thinking on it. I agree with you. If we wait until somebody's dead and then put them on the register, it's achieved nothing, because they're serving 25 or 30 years. And if we get them at the stage when they might just have been given a slap in the wrist, but instead there's a more intensive look at the individual with the possibility of counselling, then maybe we can turn it round before anybody dies.
Should the bar be lower for that 12-month sentence? You're saying that actually that people, if we catch them early enough, but as we've already said, you have to do something really quite serious to get a 12-month sentence to be put on a register. So you're at least looking at some serious physical violence before they would get that 12 months, and potentially consistent violence. They'd be maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, but maybe the third time. So should that actual bar be lower? Because domestic violence is so unique in its control. It people, that's your home, that's the place where you're meant to be at your safest, and yet that is the place where millions of people feel that they're the most danger. Are we almost saying, look, it's got to be this bad before we even step in?
There's a danger of that. Of course, this is only the draft bill. It goes in, it's the same procedure as happens in Westminster, where it goes in one forum and it's debated and views are taken, and these things can be changed. But you've hit upon what I see as the main problem, that a first offender is unlikely to get 12 months imprisonment.
Yeah.
And it's the first offenders we want to get at, because if you can turn them round when they are first offenders, then maybe less women are beaten up and less women are beaten to death, which is the target. So I wouldn't have any bar. I would say the minute you lift your hands to somebody and physically assault them, then we should have a good look at you and see what's going on, because that could lead to more victims and more serious violence.
With a register like this, would the public be able to see it? That is the other question, because if you're dating somebody, I know there are various different things, Clare's Law and things like that, that you can request from the police some information. But if somebody is a domestic abuser, are they afforded anonymity with this list?
Well, they're not afforded anonymity because, of course, it can be reported in the newspapers and it can appear in the television, it can appear in the local press and on the internet and all that. But the public would not have access to the register. But, the protection, I suppose, is that the way the sex offenders register works, by way of comparison, is the police are able to make spot checks to make sure that the offender is staying where the offender says that he's staying and is with the partner that he says he's with. So it would be quite difficult for a wife beater to move from partner X to partner Y and keep it undercover that he was on the register, because the police would find out that he wasn't where he said he was. And when they find out where he is, obviously some questions would be asked by his new partner. So there would be a level of protection which supplements the fact that victims or potential victims can ask about information.
But police wouldn't be able to tell them, presumably. If I was with somebody and police knocked at the door and said, we're just checking that John is where he said he was, and I said, well, why are you asking that question? They would say, I'm sorry, that's between me and John. They wouldn't say because he's a domestic abuser on a list.
I'm no expert in data protection. I do criminal work, but that's the kind of answer you often get for the police. So I couldn't rule out. But you take the point, just by turning up and making the inquiry, then it raises a question in the mind of the female partner that isn't raised at the moment. Because they can be with a violent individual for a couple of years before he. Yeah. Or to death, at least this way there's the chance that the police might turn up and make an inquiry which results in some form of intervention.
One of the other issues with domestic violence is that protections for, in this case, I'm going to talk about women because those are the most vulnerable in the domestic violence case. And I've read statistics that say that women don't come forward or don't report or don't, even if they've had many visits to hospitals, until the 35th, on average, attack. Yeah. Would a register like this, do you think, encourage women or discourage them? Because there's often that play with, but I love him and I know he's hurting me, but I do love him. I don't want him to end up on a register for years and years. Do you see what I mean? I don't want him to be arrested. Yeah. I don't want him to get into trouble. I know there's not much the law can do about that, but women need to feel secure in coming forward to make a complaint. True,
but it will protect the women who do come forward. We don't have that protection at the moment, even for the women who do come forward. So I don't see a downside to it, even. That's undoubtedly right. I mean, I know that women will go to work with a bruise in their face and say that they fell into the fridge or something. Yeah. It's well known. And it's difficult for the law to prosecute cases when the victim doesn't want the prosecution to proceed,
Yeah.
Even when they try very hard in Scotland, there's no lack of effort on the part of the prosecution. But if the woman goes into court and says it was an accident, that she banged her face on the fridge door or something, what can the court do, But not, a lot of women don't, a lot of women go to the police, and there are many, many prosecutions for domestic violence in Scotland. So the register would help those women, and hopefully in time the other group of women might see that it was a success and would be emboldened to come forward themselves.
Yeah, that would be the hope, wouldn't it? That would definitely be it. Thank you so much. Great talking to you. Thomas Leonard Ross there, King's Counsel of Benchmark Advocates in Glasgow. Right, we're taking a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here, and coming up at midnight we have the phone in, and it is around the subject of domestic abuse. In the UK, around 2.4 million adults experience domestic abuse a year. That number is rising. That's 1.7 million women of the 2.4 million and 699,000 men. Now that number has definitely gone up since I started talking about domestic abuse. The Office for National Statistics estimates that 1 in 4 people aged 16 and over have experienced domestic abuse since the age of 16. This translates to an estimated 12.6 million people. The ONS estimates that 26.1% of people aged 16 and over have experienced domestic abuse since the age of 16. Gender breakdown indicates that 30.3% of women and 21.7% of men have experienced domestic abuse since the age of 16. And the report also said the year ending March 22, police recorded 1.5,369 domestic abuse related incidents and crimes. Women's Aid reports that around 1 in 4 women have experienced domestic abuse by a partner since the age of 16. And Women's Aid also reports that at least 1 woman a week is killed by a male partner or ex-partner over a 3-year period. So I want to talk to you about domestic abuse, and while the acknowledgement is there that of the 2.4 million women, people, 1.7 million women and 699,000 men are abused, I'll talk to there's no point messaging me and going, well, men are abused too. Ring and tell me your story if you have been abused as a man, and what the difference, what all we know is that men that are abused are less likely to die at the hands of their abuser, that the abuse is more likely to be psychological than it is physical, although it does also include physical abuse. Do you think a register would help the process? I mean, unless it's made public, I would want that list to be made public. I don't think that somebody who beats up their partner deserves anonymity any more than I believe a sex offender does, although of course that would mean that there would be vigilantes out trying to kill people, which is why we don't get given this information. But I think that we should have the information, particularly with domestic abuser, because like I said, it's a very specific crime. This happens in your home, the place that you go to for sanctuary, for comfort. You're behind closed doors. People don't know what's going on. There's no public oversight, if you like, to what goes on behind your closed door. I think it's just so horrible a crime that there are people I know listening right now who are living in fear of a key being put in the lock. That they're just sitting there thinking, oh, this last 5 minutes of peace that I've got before my partner comes home, and then who knows what's going to happen. And that's the other thing with domestic abuse. You never know what mood they're going to be in. You never know what you're going to come up against. You don't know what's going to trigger something. You don't know just saying hello might use the wrong tone. All of those things make domestic abuse a particularly insidious and hideous and heinous crime, because it happens in your safe place. It happens where you should feel the safest. And I don't understand why, in this other report that I've got in front of me, that government are not learning lessons from the deaths that occur due to domestic abuse. That every time somebody does, they go, oh yeah, lessons will be learned, the police will have special training, there'll be this, there'll be that, there'll be the other. But I don't see much going on with it. And I don't also see a sort of, why does domestic abuse happen? What causes it? What is causing the increase in numbers that we are seeing? I don't mean excusing it. I mean what causes it. Why do people domestically abuse? If you've ever been a domestic abuser, I would give you fair hearing, obviously. I mean, you know who I am by now. I'm not gonna, I'd just be fascinated if you were, we can change your name, whatever. But if you were able to phone me and explain to me what turned you into an abuser, what happened, how did that happen? Or if you've got any other insight into that, maybe you can explain why your partner became a domestic abuser. You saw them changing, you saw them becoming this creature that you didn't recognise and you were afraid of. I think I would be really fascinated to hear your side of the story, really, genuinely. 0344 499 1000 is the number you're going to need to give me a call, and you can message me as well. If you text your message, put the word talk and then your message to 87222.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good evening to you. It's Petrie here at the moment, and coming up we are going to be talking to Beverly Lyons, entertainment reporter, and then John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. But now our only non-Scottish guest, I think, for the evening is Vicky Mitsy, journalist, broadcaster and host of the You Didn't Let Me Finish podcast. Hello, good evening.
Hi, Petrie.
Hi. Yeah,
I can't even do an accent for you, I'm afraid.
I know. You're the only non-Scottish guest this evening, but we do love our Scottish listeners and viewers, so it's good sometimes. Vicky, tell me about your podcasts for this week. True Criminals.
Yes, I've crammed a couple of juicy crime podcast for you in today.
Yeah, I like
Off the back of the last time we spoke, you going to CrimeCon.
Yes, I did.
And speaking at CrimeCon, I wanted to ask you briefly, is it okay to ask how it went?
Yeah, it was good. It was really good, I think. Yeah, I did the interview and lots of questions from the audience. So that was new for me to actually have real people. Because I know there are
as opposed to our stuffed dummies.
Yeah, I know that people are listening and watching, but I can't see them. So when I see people, it's kind of a little bit more scary, to be honest with you. But no, it went well. It was an interesting place, actually. CrimeCon.
Were they scary crime people?
There were a lot of crime people there, a lot of podcast hosts, a lot of book writers, a lot of I don't think there were many criminals there, but
it's a wide spectrum of all those interested in crime, such as myself.
Yeah, it really was. You would have loved it. You would have loved it.
Yeah, I know.
It was fascinating.
I know I would. That's why I've chosen True Criminals, and the hosts Martin Brunt and Helen Fospero interact very nicely. I didn't want to stop listening to this one. It really is quite a gem. The stories behind the stories, I like how they sold it as well. It's very juicy. It's so shocking. They still haven't left our imaginations, apparently. It's sensational, but it's in a good way. And it's in a way that you can feel the crime, but you can also see how the journalists are approaching it. It's nicely done, well-selected bits and pieces put together in a nice way with bits of tales and some really great voices. There is a little bit, however, Petrie, of a so, Martin, what do you think of this? And how do you do that? And I find that a little bit interesting. It's kind of not for everyone, but that doesn't last long. And the two journalists are seasoned. They know what they're doing.
Well, Martin Brunt was crime correspondent for decades, wasn't he? I mean, that was his job.
Absolutely right.
Yeah,
absolutely right. And he was talking about, I mean, they cover the full gamut of crime. It's quite interesting where they go. Some crimes I hadn't thought of for a very long time because they dated way back, such as Lord Lucan was one of the ones that they interacted about, Richard Ramirez, Sarah Payne, big ones that he was guiding us through how he would approach. And the 7/7 with the commemorations recently, he was talking about what he was doing, how they were approaching it. He was on a tube in another part of London, and they were, how you actually really the kind of gritty part, or the quite boring sometimes part of how you approach news.
See, as a journalist, I would find that really, really interesting. I think we've got a clip of the Lord Lucan part of this podcast,
okay.
So let's have a listen.
A man comes up the stairs, there's a struggle. He tries to choke her and hits her twice over the head with a lead pipe. By now she knows it's her estranged husband John, Lord Lucan, and she squeezes his balls. He almost passes out and both of them collapse.
This case has it all. A wealthy aristocrat, a bloody murder, a fugitive who vanished without trace. And 50 years on, it's one of the world's longest-running murder mysteries. In a two-part special, we'll explore the disappearance of Lord Lucan.
He was innocent, and he was trying to say that Veronica has always been after him. Their divorce has been so horrendous that this is one big conspiracy against him, and he's totally innocent of the charges at his door, but he'll never see a fair trial. And after that, he vanished. He disappeared. He drives out of Grants Hill House down the drive in the blue Ford Corsair, never, ever to be seen again.
Yeah, it really was one of those crimes, wasn't it, that people will forever be talking about, I tell you. So that's True Criminals. What about Poison?
Again, I come back. I'm quite good, actually, as a reviewer for you guys, because I do keep it. It's the Times, the Sunday Times. This is a 3-part podcast, but it's season 9 from the reporter from the Times and Sunday Times, and solid stuff, knows where it's coming from, but the opposite end of the spectrum really from True Criminals. It's complete with suspenseful music, and James Beale, the guy who put this story together and gave it legs, as they say, has a very different approach to presenting. You can hear that he's a kind of, he is a broadcaster. He knows how to broadcast, but you can tell that he's kind of nitty-gritty news, and he's quite gentle, if you can say that. He's got quite a gentle voice with it all. And they integrate the producer to talking as a kind of narration to the podcast. But the background of it is that Beale looked into the suicide of a 22-year-old student, Tom Parfitt, who took his own life using a substance sold by a man called Kenneth Law, who was based in Canada. And this guy had been selling these substances through the post for people to kill themselves, quite frankly. And so it has the topic of suicide, into these episodes, and it speaks to Professor Rory O'Connor, who authored a book on suicide, preventative work around suicide, and his own personal stories, and something that I found quite interesting, exploring around the topic of suicide, but also the crime of, can you murder somebody?
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing with these drugs, it's been a big story, hasn't it, recently?
It's been big.
A huge story. We have a clip of this, but of course I just need to put out the warning that this does relate to suicidal ideation and suicidal thoughts. So just so you know that.
It's just after 12 on a winter's day in February this year, and I'm in the front room of a family home. I'm here with David Parfitt, a 54-year-old who works in IT.
So there's a photo here of Tom with Tigger.
We're sitting on a large grey couch, looking at old family photos.
Absolutely grinning. Really, really happy.
His son Tom, around 7 or 8 years old in this photo, has floppy blonde hair and glasses. He smiles into the camera at Disneyland Paris.
But yeah, we used to pop over there as a family, and of course as a kid it's just a magical place to go. And
he looks very happy here.
Yeah, certainly was. And one of my favourite photos was Tom dressed up as Fireman Sam, or at least a Fireman Sam's helmet, just singing along.
I love this photo.
Yeah, he's really smart.
Tom is the middle of David's 3 children.
Too quickly, they quickly grew up. So lovely to look back at some photos of them.
His daughter and other son are now adults. In fact, David recently became a grandfather. But I'm here because of Tom.
Yeah, he's
very young there.
Very young, isn't he? Yeah.
Because Tom Parfitt is no longer alive.
Yeah, that's really sad, isn't it? That's nicely done. Very nicely done to get that human angle to it.
Well, it's also, it's also a crime which is yet, the case has been delayed by a series of, it's unprecedented in selling substances over the internet. There's the topic as can you say kick the can down the road of this trial? Because, can you murder somebody by, Beale speaks to Kenneth Law, and he sort of doorsteps him at his car, and Kenneth Law is he does actually interact and say, I wasn't doing anything, I was selling a product. You know, it's interesting from that point of view, but
yeah,
it's
I mean, I
also
guess if they'd
interesting.
chosen a different product, like, for example, a knife, then is the seller of the knife responsible for the suicide? It is a very complicated case. I accept that. That sounds really, really interesting. Let's move on quickly to trigonometry.
Yes, what we've got here is a pair of journalists who I've got to say I haven't heard of. I haven't heard of either of them. I don't even have their names to hand. I'm kind of seeking them out. But they,
Constantine Kissin and Francis Foster.
yes, those are the two, and they're very competent. They're actually comedians, but they're very competent hosts. And they have quite a variety. I mean, what engaged me was that I thought, okay, they've got, they had Dr. Lawrence Newport on, a campaigner at something called Crush Crime, talking about crime stats in cities. And it's very crime based. I'm sorry, it's not very jolly tonight. But what was interesting about that was actually, I chose, because of crime, to leave London, and I no longer live there. And it was talking about this just proliferation of crime, the fact that a very small percentage of criminals are the people perpetuating these same crimes that are not getting investigated, and they rigged up this. This guy, Lawrence Newport, rigged up this situation, called the cops saying, you know, my bike's been stolen. And they put a bike with two GPS trackers on it just next to the Metropolitan Police HQ, and said, you know, we can see the tracker moving. It's now outside someone's flat and it's gone here, and they're coming in and out of the flat with the bike. Nothing was done. And then they reported it to the Telegraph saying nothing's done about all these things that are stolen, and no one ever even bothers.
No.
And then the Met moved on it, said actually we were going to do something about the CCTV, which, you know, there are about 6 cameras pointing at this, you know, the Met HQ. And then the ball was dropped again. So it was just really interesting how, you know, who's involved, you know, the amount of the kind of reeking at the seams prisons, and what that does to our cops on duty. You know, can they care if they can actually not do anything about sentencing these people who come in and out of the door?
You hear stories of people who've had their car nicked and they've had to go and get it themselves, you know, because the police haven't done anything. Let's move on quickly to Pete Wicks's Man-Made.
Oh, I really want to know what you think about this, because what do you think about? I'm quite interested in him. I saw him on Strictly, I have to confess, and I was like, he looks like a character, loves animals.
Yeah, he's an animal lover, so he's automatically in my good books for that.
He's good in it, yes. And I just thought it was quite interesting. Do we really need to hear what is a man these days and discussions around that? But when I listen to him, he talked to Caitlin Moran, and I wanted you to listen to that episode because the pair of them is kind of chalk and cheese. They're coming from different places, and she's kind of shouting about, you know, I've already darkened your doorstep with some bad language this evening, but she doesn't take any prisoners.
Well, listen, let's have a very quick listen because we're running out of time. This is Pete Wicks's Man-Made.
What we do on this pod, or what I do, first of all, is just go straight in. If I were to ask you what your definition of a man is, what would you say?
I think I would say that my definition of a man is someone who at times needs to lead and sometimes needs to be led. And I think for too long we had an image of a man as the person who always had to lead. And then I think we've now tried to lead men, and I think now what we need to do is get ourselves into a place where we allow men to be both of those things.
It's the best answer I've had so far. I like it. I knew it was going to be. I knew it was going to be. I mean, if you were... I mean, this is a really, really broad question, and it's probably quite a hard one to answer, but what do you think men in society now are failing at?
So there you go. That is Pete Wicks's Man Made. I suppose that'd be quite interesting while I'm doing the gardening. Actually, I've got to paint some doors and windows this weekend.
Oh,
So
okay.
I may do
hold
that.
your hand while you paint.
Yes.
Well, I did think that they've fallen by the wayside. You know, feminism has gone wherever it's gone.
I know. It's such a shame. Vicky, it's lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Vicky Mitsy there, journalist, broadcaster and host of the You Didn't Let Me Finish podcast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, and a good evening. Just a reminder that John Boothman will be with us at the top of the hour. He's the political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. And keeping up with our Scottish theme for the evening, Beverly Lyons joins me now, entertainment reporter. Hello.
Evening to you, Petrie. How are you?
I'm extremely well. Right, Beverly, let's kick off with Netflix Ghost Hunter. Oh gosh, I read about this.
Isn't it awful? Basically, we've got Dan Rivera, who has been touring with a spooky doll, a possessed doll, who was actually the inspiration for the film Annabelle. Her name was Annabelle, also for The Conjuring. And this doll has been kept in a glass case in a museum in America. But actually, Dan was taking her on tour. And I mean, it's a bit of a weird one. Would you like to see a spooky doll that's meant to have done so much damage?
I would not go anywhere near a spooky doll.
Well, somebody mocked her prior to this, and basically they said, "Oh, you don't scare me. You know, you're nothing. You're just a doll." And then he as he was on his way home, he had a fatal accident on his motorcycle. So this kind of thing, I don't think you mess with it. I know that you could say on one hand, I mean, people have been saying, oh, let my dog have 2 minutes with it and it'll show her who's the boss. But ultimately, now Dan has been found dead in his hotel room whilst on tour with the doll. So that in itself is a bit spooky. But then, you know, there's maybe a genuine reason for this. You know, he lives a frantic lifestyle, and there could be.
He was only 52 years old, right? He was only 52.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, people are saying it is the doll, but then equally that just makes the currency of the doll go right back up, doesn't it? And people will dare themselves to see this as part of the Devils on Tour kind of thing. Devils on the Run is what they've called the tour.
Yeah, no,
and Annabelle is the doll.
I mean, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but I just wouldn't take it any chance. And I don't like dolls anyway. They are creepy. So there's no way that I would, no, I wouldn't want to go, no, thank you. This story is extraordinary as well. Conor McGregor's, is she a fiance? Dee Devlin stands by him. Despite this photograph. Now, I've seen that photograph. There is no way that I would put up with that behaviour.
They've got 4 children between them, okay, so maybe there's a bigger picture here in some ways. But it does all seem a bit bizarre. Conor McGregor seen smooching as he celebrated his birthday in, I think it was Florida. Now, Dee Devlin, nowhere in sight. We don't know the true nature of their relationship. She says that he entertains her. Maybe they've got some sort of open relationship. It might be the only explanation, or perhaps it's the fact that he's now a billionaire. And maybe she's just standing by her man because she wants the safety and security
Is he really
for her children.
he's a billionaire?
Yeah, he's made absolute fortunes from all sorts of things, whether it's the MMA fighting that he does, or whether it's the booze that he also has, and he's got various other business concerns.
He went
as
over
well.
to, that's the images we're showing here, is when he went over to America and embarrassed himself, wasn't it? Saying that he was going to be the Taoiseach of, he wanted to be the head of, I don't know. Anyway,
well, he's running for president in Ireland.
He's he's an absolute horror of a man. I mean, that, we just did a podcast about what makes a man. He could do with listening to that, to be fair. Yeah, an absolute horror show. But the image of him smooching this woman is as far as I'm concerned, that is just no. Just no.
And that is just
it wasn't a peck on the cheek, let's put it that way.
No, but you've also got that has now arisen from it. Maybe I should be careful what I say here. But he's been sending, or allegedly sending, pictures of himself in the buff to American rappers. Azealia Banks, who has shared an image of that online. There's quite a lot of edited versions of that picture with little smiling faces on the private parts. But if you look properly, you'll be able to find the actual Conor McGregor pictures.
What a catch!
And let's just say he's a heavyweight in all areas.
Yeah, what a catch! I mean, there isn't enough money in the world, frankly. No, thank you. Harry Potter stars have been banned from driving on the same day.
I think this is just a weird one, isn't it? Because you've got Emma Watson, who of course is in Harry Potter, and you've got Zoe Wanamaker there, as you're seeing. Both of them being done for speeding. Emma was in July, that it happened last year, and for Zoe, it was in August. I think she was doing 46 in a 40-mile-an-hour zone, and Emma was doing 36 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, thereabouts. They've both been given a 6-month ban with driving. Emma had she had 9 points on her licence. I'm thinking that maybe cars are not what they should be doing. Maybe it's broomsticks.
Yeah, or maybe they thought it was a flying car, and so yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, oh dear.
It's all happened at once, and they weren't going to the same thing. As I say, there was a month apart between each of their speeding offences, but it's just a bit weird, isn't it? And of course, this all comes as Harry Potter kicks off the TV series with, of course, we've got Dominic McLaughlin is the new Harry Potter, who's Scottish, who's going to be on telly on HBO's new series as well. So it's all the talk about Harry Potter.
All the Potters, but they'll be all right. I think they can afford a cab between them. I think they'll be fine. John Turode. Now this is interesting because, of course, the BBC have just sacked him, and there was a question mark over what that would do for the rest of his TV career. But it seems that he might just be all right.
Well, this is it. I mean, he is, he's saying that he doesn't recall anything, and at the moment protesting all about that. ITV have stepped in. They'll still be airing the programme that he has with his wife. I think it will be the 3rd series. So all is not lost for John Turode fans at this stage in the game, despite Greg Wallace's protestations that more will come out. But we have to wait and see. Greg Wallace, of course, he himself shamed and taken off the series after 20 years. And John also having spent 20 years of his life there. But of course, the BBC are saying the programme is much bigger than the sum of its parts. So, than the parts. The sum is bigger than the parts.
Sneezing, and I pressed the wrong button. I meant to press the cough button, and I pressed the talk back button, so they all got to hear it in double.
Great.
Yeah, so John Turode, he's married to Lisa Faulkner, isn't he? The actress.
That's right, yes. Yeah. And they've got a very successful series. They do their Weekend Kitchen. And so
they met
ITV will
on
be airing
MasterChef.
that.
didn't
Well,
they?
there you go. And I'm sure it wasn't when the alleged comments were made in 2018.
Yeah.
But then who knows?
Well, we don't know, and you also don't know if there's going to be some kind of backlash against Tyrone, because a lot of people love to get busy, don't they? People love to get busy, and they love to complain, and they love to, you know, even if they've never even thought about John Tyrone a moment in their lives, they'll be like, oh, we can take him down. So I think that Tyrone needs to be very careful right now.
That's right. Once you see one story, there's always other stories that come forth, and people say, oh, actually, I've got a little story about John. Do you know that this happened? And then we get into all sorts of bother.
Yeah, and
so
it doesn't even matter if they're true or not at this stage. We know that. It's, you know, tall poppy syndrome. Just take them down, cut them down at their knees. So, I just hope that John knows what he's potentially coming up against.
Absolutely.
But the next story is about you.
Oh, by the way, this seems so self-indulgent.
No, I love it. It's not, you know, this is for me. I wanted to hear this. So it's not you selling yourself. It's me asking. So tell me about it.
Okay, so during COVID, I entertained my neighbours and others on social media by singing. I think quite a lot of people did it. Little did I know that it would spiral into something quite exciting, in fact, extremely exciting. We know that obviously COVID was a wee while ago. There's been a few stops and starts happening, some family bereavements and things in between, and you know the music industry. However, I can finally announce that on July the 23rd, I am releasing my debut single, and I cannot believe it. This is just an absolute, it's a total side thing here because, you know, I'm the showbiz girl, I'm the entertainment journalist, but now I'm a fully fledged singer.
The boots on the other foot. We've got a clip. So we're going to play it now. Oh, you've got a voice on you.
Thank you. It's
you kept that hidden. Wow, I'm going to insist that you sing every one of these moments that we have now. You're going to have to sing all the words because that is brilliant. Well, listen, I wish you so much luck with that. A debut single coming out on July 23rd called I'm Leaving You, and I guess people can just download that and buy it and just make you a star.
Brilliant. Yes, you can pre-save it right now as well. It's on all platforms if you go to DistroKid, but also if you go on Apple, Spotify and all that kind of thing, you can pre-save it.
Best of luck with that, Beverly Lyons there. I'm Leaving You, and I'm leaving you for a couple of minutes.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Petrie with you, and thank you for your company. And with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Hello, John, good to see you.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm always happy when I see you. We've had a very Scottish show tonight. I had one guest that wasn't Scottish so far, so that I feel that we're doing our bit for Scotland.
I'll be fine as long as you don't ask me to sing.
Oh, we might get to that a bit later. John, I want to start actually with a Scottish story that I started the programme with, and that is Scottish Parliament seeking views for a new law that would create a register for domestic abusers. I can't really see any reason why this wouldn't go through. What have you heard?
Look, you know, this is, it's been mooted before. The person proposing it is a member of the Scottish Parliament, a woman called Pam Gozal, who's a Conservative member. I think broadly there will be a lot of sympathy for this, but it's now come back. She introduced the bill in May. It's at stage 1, so it will be discussed and we'll see where it goes. And what it proposes to do is to introduce a register and require offenders to actually give information to that register. But it's got some other interesting things as well, including education about abuse and about domestic violence in schools, which I think, you know, nobody would be against. I mean, this is a huge problem in Scotland. I think in 23-24 there were 65,000 incidences of domestic abuse, and you know that's the incidences of domestic abuse that we know about.
Yeah.
And of course it's very difficult sometimes and challenging for the police to do things about this, because a whole load of people who are involved in these incidents, although the police might get called out, it may be that you don't end up with charges or anything like that. So it's a very, very, very big problem.
I mean, it's a huge problem. And just looking at those Scottish numbers, of course, they're on the rise. Has there been any studies done, John, of why there are so many? As you said, those are only the ones that we know have led to potentially an arrest and a charge. We don't know about anything else. But, you know, if that's the number that's being reported, you can bet that that is double or triple the number of people who are not reporting. Why is this happening? Is there studies done on that?
I think it's always been a problem. It's been a kind of problem that's a hidden problem and probably more accepted in the past, therefore not reported to the police. But now it's become much more unacceptable. And I think that, you know, that there is a determination among the authorities and the police to actually do something about it, because the numbers are pretty high. I mean, you know, we're talking about, if it's 64,000, what's that? More than 1,000 incidences a week. So if it's more than, that's a couple of hundred maybe a day. So you can tell how big a problem it is. And you're right, it's up 3% on the last set of figures. So it's something that's not going away.
I mean, is there any link to drugs or alcohol? I mean, not an excuse. I mean, I'm not suggesting for a moment that would excuse domestic violence, but you know, is it to do with poverty? These are the things that I don't often see studies done into. I wonder if it's not taken that seriously by the justice system, because it's just, well, that's just what happens behind closed doors.
Look, I think all of these things, I think you're right, poverty, drugs, alcohol, no doubt in the areas of deprivation. I think this will be a bigger problem than in other areas, though I'm sure there's plenty of middle-class domestic abuse goes on as well, it has to be said. You know, the other thing, I mean, we have very, very strange warnings occasionally from the police that, for example, when there's an Old Firm match between Celtic and Rangers at the weekend, the numbers go through, at any weekend, the numbers go through the roof. no doubt, for the team who's actually lost in the game, which is really, really odd. But actually, the police have issued warnings in the past about that.
That's extraordinary. So men go off to the football game, get tanked, they lose the game, so they go home and beat up their partner.
Yeah, that seems to be a wee bit of a pattern, yeah.
Good heavens. I mean, look, I suppose anything that has the potential to work has got to be tried, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you can compel people to contribute to this register and keep a register, then that obviously would be a very good thing. I do like the idea of the whole idea of getting back to the roots of this, going into schools and talking about it, because again, I just think that's something that's been sadly lacking in the past.
Well, yeah, because you've got children in abusive families that might, if they're not educated, might think that's what men do, or that's what women do to their husband. They might just grow up believing, well, that's how I need to be in my marriage or in my relationship.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, that we haven't talked about is, all of that stuff we see in social media, all the stuff that we see in relation to, the Tate guys in Romania and the like, which completely changes the dynamic, right, of what happens in any of these kind of situations. You're right, it becomes accepted, it becomes the norm. Therefore, people think it's okay to do it.
Yeah, and boys, like you said, listening to Tate, believing that they are the master and they control their women, and their women have got to do exactly what they're told. If that's the language that they're learning, then that's who they're going to grow up to be. It is horrifying to me. It's one of the, I've been saying before, John, this is where you should feel safe, right? Is at home, and right now there are people dreading the door opening and their partner coming home. And they don't know what they're going to be faced with. They don't know what mood they're going to be in. They don't know what is going to happen in the next few hours when they're pretending to be asleep. It's just awful, awful. Right, let's have a look at the newspapers. We'll start with our American paper for today, and it is the Washington Post. And $9 billion in greenlit funding in peril. This is the Senate voted on Tuesday to advance President Donald Trump's request to claw back $9 billion in foreign aid and federal funding for public broadcasting, despite the misgivings of some Republicans.
Look, all part of, every time, it's probably worth saying, every time I come on the programme, Petrie, we seem to talk about Donald Trump, right? And, here's another manifestation of it, making America great again. Everything's to be America-centric, put America first. And, we're talking here about $9 billion in foreign aid. I mean, it's a huge, huge amount of money. There's another story on the front page of the Washington Post that's kind of related to this about Afghanistan, saying that the cuts that have already been made in foreign aid is hitting 3 million people in Afghanistan. Now, a lot of people in America will agree with that, except for the fact that America promised, when it left Afghanistan 4 years ago, that Afghanistan would never be abandoned after 20 years of war in Afghanistan. So, Trump's turning everything on its head. The Republicans are wholly in support of him. And, this is the result.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? You can't have a country going back on its promises like this. I mean, it just means you don't... I mean, look, they did that with Ukraine. Ukraine was promised that if it gave up its nuclear weapons, it would always be protected by NATO forces. It would always be protected by America. Nah, that's gone as well. Yeah, I mean, I saw today as well, John, that 500 tonnes of food aid that was due to be sent abroad is being burned to ash, and that's enough to feed 1.5 million children for a week, and they're just setting fire to it and burning it.
I mean, that story about Afghanistan there, has this message at the end of it saying that, food aid and the money the Americans have been given in aid to Afghanistan is no longer going to happen because it no longer aligns with American interests. And that's what all these stories are about. It's what is the American interest, and in this case it's Trump's interest, and if Trump's interest is against it to put America first, then it ain't going to happen.
It is, but isn't it putting America first to stand by your promises? I don't know. I mean, you'd think that that would give them credibility. We can't. Donald Trump has lost credibility around the world, not just for his tariffs on and off and off and off and off and on again, and his threats that he then backs down from, his promises of war is going to be ended, promises that America made to Afghanistan, say, I know we're going to pull out and leave you to the mercy of some of the most brutal and violent people on the planet, the Taliban, but we're also going to take your aid away. I mean, it's...
Look, it's where we are in the world, and it's where Trump is, and at the end of the day, representing the most powerful country in the world, he's a guy who can get away with it, and still has, despite the fact that his numbers are falling a bit, still has the support of a huge amount of people, huge number of people in the United States.
Yeah, I suppose they don't care what their reputation is around the world, since they tend to think that America's the only country in the world anyway. But there you go. Let's have a look at the Daily Telegraph. That is sporting a photograph of Prince Harry, who is wearing an explosion vest because he's copying his mother, who went to walk amongst the mines. You remember that very famous photograph of her wearing a very similar vest and walking in a minefield that I suspect had already been cleared, but there you go.
I put a pretty poignant kind of picture of Harry. I'm fascinated by the whole tale now of Prince Harry. Are we getting some kind of rapprochement with his father? What is happening around all of this? Again, when I see these photographs and I see any stories about Harry these days, I wonder to myself, what's the agenda here? What is he trying to get across? And I think that there is clearly something going on in terms of trying to regain a wee bit of public sympathy or something in this country, because so much has been lost. And as I say, there was that story earlier in the week that maybe there could be some kind of deal brokered between, emissaries or whatever, not directly between, father and son, but people were talking about the possibility of some kind of rapprochement.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Harry's been saying that he's worried that his father's not long for this world, hasn't he? And maybe, but I think it's a totally different thing if he wants to get back in with William and Kate. I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. But I see this as being very cynical of Harry, just to try and recreate that image of his mother, because he knows that the British people loved his mother, and it feels like he's doing it to get some reflected love by doing the same thing and having the same photograph taken. I'm very cynical about it.
Look, it could be. Look, people have got short memories, though. Things can change, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, well... right, let's have a look at the other stories. Cabinet bid to halt the Afghan airlift. This is what the Telegraph is going with. Ministers objected on security grounds, but were overruled with emotional blackmail.
I mean, this in itself is just an absolutely amazing story. The government make a mistake, then as a result of that mistake, they're forced into setting up a scheme at a cost of hundreds of millions of pounds in order to safely bring Afghans to this country, which they hide, which nobody knows about. They then go to court and get a super injunction about it. And all of this out of the public gaze, out of the gaze of members of Parliament. Nobody knows about it. We finally get the Labour government, which has come in, which has been left to do something about it, and actually puts this into the public domain. There are still big concerns, obviously, about Afghans who are still in Afghanistan around all of this stuff. It's an amazing story, and what's interesting about the Telegraph is there's people popping up out of the woodwork everywhere saying, one, it ain't got nothing to do with me. Suella Braverman's done that. Michael Gove's done that.
Liz Truss was like, oh, I didn't know about that. She was Home
James
Secretary.
Cleverly, the same. We didn't know, Gov. Ben Wallace, on the other hand, saying, defending the situation after the mistake. And it's just an absolutely amazing story. My big concern about it would be, this is something that's all happened behind closed doors. Who says this couldn't happen about something else in the future?
But it had to happen behind closed doors, didn't it? Because of the leak. Because if they'd made it public, then the Taliban have got a heads up as to, who these people are. They've already declared now. They said, yeah, we've got the list and we've been acting on it, because they declared that anybody that had helped the British or American forces was a traitor and would be put to death. So, it was because of the leak that this had to be done secretly. It wasn't to fool the rest of us.
Sure, but I'm not disagreeing with that, but there are mechanisms, have been mechanisms in Parliament, for example, to deal with these kind of things on a cross-party basis, either by setting up some kind of interim committee. There's a thing called the Intelligence and Security Committee, which is cross-party, which discusses all of these kind of matters. Somebody somewhere needs to hold the government accountable, even if it's behind closed doors, right? Yeah. And the point about this was that none of this appears to have gone anywhere near anything like that. Now, they are now talking about inquiries. I heard the suggestion earlier today about a public inquiry. The last thing I think they should do in a situation like this is a public inquiry, because we'll still be sitting here in 7 years' time waiting to see what the result of such an inquiry might be. What they need to do is have some kind of cross-party inquiry, if that's the way to do it, or expert-led inquiry that can examine this over a short time scale and come to some kind of conclusion about it. I do accept what you're saying, that given the gravity of the leak and given it was all about a huge number of people, we're talking about 20,000 people who've come in this secret scheme, and many more in Afghanistan, that you would have to have done that kind of in private, but somebody somewhere needed to know what was going on here other than just the government. And as I say, the worry that I would have is that it sets some kind of precedent for things, going forward. You can't just have the government without anybody knowing about it in Parliament, be it doing these kind of things and not being held accountable, even if it is somehow or other behind closed doors. I'm always very dubious of super injunctions anyway. They very rarely are warranted, I think. But of course we can't mention super injunctions, that's the whole point. Well, we all know the ones that are out there. I don't know how I know about. How do we know about them when nobody else knows about them? Well, it's the ones that we don't know about that maybe we should worry about. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Mind you, I do know about some, but I think, how do I know about them? Anyway, should we take a break, John? Let's come back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here, and with me is the fabulous John Boothman, who is the political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, let's turn our attention to the Financial Times and Damascus damage. So Israel has bombed Syria.
Yeah, yet another country at the hands of the Israelis, including the Defence Ministry in Damascus. The Israelis have justified their action on the basis that the Druze people, who are a small group of people that exist around Syria, a bit on the border with the Lebanon, saying that they are the brothers and sisters of the Israelis. The President said earlier this evening, and they shouldn't be attacked, and they're there to protect them. There is some theory around suggesting that this is all the Israelis are trying to create some kind of buffer zone in areas on the Syrian border, which will bolster their position.
Yeah, and it's really feels to me now that Israel is so emboldened by the support that it gets from the Trump administration that it just feels it can do anything to anyone at any time. I mean, I've never, Israel is really, I mean, I know Netanyahu's got a very good reason for continuing the fighting and creating more fighting because he doesn't want to be put in prison if he loses his job. And if there's a peace deal with Hamas or in Palestine, then the likelihood is the right wing on his party will collapse the party and he'll end up out of power and he'll end up in prison. So I get it, but just to go and bomb another country.
The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, himself saying that, it was a bit of a misunderstanding and that this will get sorted out. But, we've now got a big, long list of the countries that the Israelis have attacked. Aside from what's happening in Gaza, they've now been fighting with the Yemenis, they've been fighting with the Lebanese, they've been fighting with the Iranians, they're fighting with the Syrians. And, the whole situation is completely and utterly destabilised in the Middle East.
But I think that's the goal. I think that's the aim.
Yeah, but on the other hand, they're not making many friends. I do find now what's happening in Gaza has, tipped the balance with a whole lot of people. People were utterly and correctly horrified about the October the 7th attack by Hamas. But when you're seeing scenes where isn't it interesting, it is for me anyway, that, when food aid was being distributed by international organisations before, nobody appeared to be getting killed. Now, hundreds of people are being killed. The Israelis are blaming Hamas for this, but hundreds of people are being killed for the simple action of going to try and feed their families who are actually starving. And at the same time, to add to the long list of people who the Israelis are traducing in the Middle East, one of the things that's happening is what the wholesale takeover of big bits of the West Bank.
I was just about to mention that on the border with Egypt, they've taken a huge slice of that.
Well, that's on the Rafah, near the Rafah crossing and the like. But in the West Bank, right? This was supposed to be the place that was to be the place where a Palestinian state may be solved. It's being, colonised by more and more settlers. People's houses are being destroyed. People are being stuck in jails for, the least of crimes. And look, the Israelis, they have got themselves into a place where I suspect they are more unpopular than Israel has ever been in the history of the state.
It is breathtaking, isn't it? With, like you said, with what's going on in the Gaza Strip, what's going on in the West Bank, and just this sort of this sense that they seem to have that they can do whatever they want. That's what it appears to me. Extraordinary photograph there of Damascus as well. Let's have a look at the Times. Walkouts by junior doctors led to deaths of 5 patients.
I'm not surprised at this story at all. You know, you can't have walkouts by doctors in hospitals without there being adverse consequences, no matter what kind of, you know, emergency temporary measures that you put in place. This presumably will be a big concern going forward for the Health Secretary and the BMA, you know, if there's going to be any more industrial action on pay. I mean, on that issue, you know, I think more generally, you know, the doctors managed to get, was it 28% over 3 years last year? I'm not sure, even in a situation where normally people in the health service would get sympathy for going on strike, that given what they got last year is enough for them to be taking more industrial action this year.
Yeah, I mean, we're streeting the Health Secretary. He's been saying you won't have the backing of the public. And stories like this, of course, we will see more of as this strike gets closer. But I wonder if it will make any difference. And there's also the story, John, about how it's going to cost, because they'll have to get consultants, the higher level of doctor, to replace the junior doctors who go on strike at a cost of between £3,000 and £4,000 a shift.
Well, you know, look, this is just astonishing, and I think you're right, adds more fuel to the fire, to the pressure that will be on the British Medical Association and its members not to go on strike.
Yeah, it's quite the story. Well, I don't think they will get the backing this time. What about this one? Starmer. He may seem like a wet, weak blanket, but he's certainly stomping on his own people.
Yeah, look, he's taken action against 4 MPs, 3 of them only newly elected last year at the general election, and Rachel Maskell, the York MP, a 4th MP, suspended, having the whip taken away from them in the House of Commons. Now, it appears that all of these MPs played a pretty prominent part in the recent rebellion over welfare and disability cuts. And this is Starmer, you know, finally showing, according to his supporters and probably his critics, a bit of backbone and actually taking them on. Now, I think this is a very interesting story because I think clearly, given the scale of the rebellion in the last couple of weeks, given the fact that, you know, he's already been turned over, made mistakes over the winter fuel payment, changed his mind over the welfare and disability plans and changed his mind, that, you know, all of these rebel MPs felt a bit emboldened and there was a bit of the tail wagging the dog going on. It's an interesting move from Starmer to try and regain control, particularly given that it's, a week and a half before the parliamentary recess.
Yeah.
But I think what we need to remember is the next bit in the Starmer journey is going to be really, really interesting, because the last thing that he needs is a huge row at the Labour Party conference, which we'll get in the autumn, and you can see this coming already. You've already seen Unite and last week suspending Angela Rayner over what's happening in Birmingham. You've got other unions complaining about the welfare cuts. You've had this backbench rebellion and other unhappy, you know, MPs. There could be a lot of bother for Starmer and Rachel Reeves at the conference. And what they don't need on the back of that is then having another budget where they're going to break their promises on taxation, and as well as breaking their promises on taxation, probably going to have to introduce some more cuts to budgets. So it's not a very pleasant situation that he's got himself into, and, you know, it's going to play out big style in the next few months. And at the same time,
I mean, trying to crush the rebels is, first of all, it's not very Labour. Right. I mean, you know, Labour is about saying we want to do this for the people, and, you know, pushing the envelope and pushing it further than other parties might do so. So this isn't going to go down well. If he sees these rebels being suspended, if the rest of the party sees the rebels being suspended, that's only going to create more rebels, surely, because that's what rebels are. They rebel. So that's what they're going to do.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, where the ordinary members of the Labour Party are in this stuff. I kind of tend to think that maybe there'll be a lot of sympathy for the rebels, because I think you're right, because the sort of issues that we are talking about are issues that, would chime with, I suppose, what
traditionally Labour issues, right?
Yeah, traditional Labour values and all that, yeah. So I think, there's more trouble to come for Starmer in all of this. But look, his big problem still remains that he lacks a narrative. He lacks a direction. We don't really know what he stands for. When he was elected because of not who he is, or he was elected basically because of he wasn't somebody else, right? He was elected on kind of a third of the vote in the country.
Yeah.
And, you really need to try and establish yourself very quickly, I think, in those situations. And what's happened with Starmer is the opposite.
Yeah. The party conferences are going to be, for a change, they're going to be quite interesting, I think, this year. Let's take a break, John. We'll come back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's Petrie, and with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Let's have a look at the Daily Star. Leaky bum time.
My favourite headline of the day, don't have any doubt about that. Paraphrasing, I think, Sir Alec Ferguson, who famously said that. I can't remember which particular crucial game he said it before. He described it as squeaky bum time. The story, though, if there is a story at all, is that I think it's one of the bosses of Thames Water, is blaming the weather for leaks in the water supply and saying it's nothing to do with the water company in it. I have to say, I'm bound to ask, right, and I will ask this because we don't have this problem north of the border, given that it's under public control, but are water companies the most unpopular companies south of the border?
Oh, certainly right up there, completely. Yeah, they are an absolute disaster, particularly Thames Water, which is the story that they're talking about here. They are beyond the pale. I mean, seriously, they've added 30% to our bills. They're giving us now, there'll be hosepipe bans across the whole of the Thames Water, we think, coming very, very soon. They are losing, they're losing 200 million litres, I can't remember what it is, some ridiculous amount of water every single day because they haven't fixed the infrastructure. And now they're blaming the rain for leaks.
All of that's interesting. I mean, I have to say, our water levels were down a couple of months ago. We've had a really good week of weather up until, 2 days ago. And of course, Scotland being Scotland, it started raining again the day before yesterday. I think we're going to get some better weather, towards the end of the week. But it's been an interesting time here because over the past few months, one of the things that's been happening, and I may have said this when I was on before, but there's been more of it this weekend, is there's been quite a lot of wildfires around in the north of Scotland because the ground is so dry. A lot of the blame appears still to go on, you know, people who are out there for a day trip, maybe dropping a cigarette or something. Then with the dry vegetation just sets up a fire, and, you know, bang, it's right across the countryside. So it's been particularly prevalent in the north of Scotland, and lots of warnings anytime there's good weather. Now, look, we've had wildfires before, but you keep hearing about them much more frequently in a way that you didn't before.
People are very, very casual and careless. I mean, a lot of people take those disposable barbecues as well when they go hill walking and stuff, and that's just, you might as well take some petrol and just pour it on the ground and throw a match on it. People just don't care. They're not thoughtful about things like that at all, particularly townies, I will say, going out to the countryside. Right, so let's move to the Daily Express. There is anti-terror scheme Prevent failed to provide help that could have stopped the killers of the 3 girls in Southport and the MP David Amos.
I mean, that's a pretty astonishing allegation that would be the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, this Prevent programme, I mean, it's something that we hear about quite frequently. We don't hear very much about the successes of the Prevent programme.
Well, we wouldn't, though, would we? Because you're preventing an act of terror, so you can't quantify the negative, can you?
That's certainly true. But, you know, it's pretty astonishing that you get a story saying that, you know, what happened in Prevent could have done something that would have prevented, you know, this really horrible, these killings of the 3 girls in Southport and of an MP. Kind of a bit mind-boggling just to see that story, to be honest.
I know that Prevent, they were accused of being anti-Islamic. They have had a lot of problems with trying to get on top of sort of Islamic crimes and terror. So they switched their kind of you know, their microscope, if you like, onto far right criminality, which none of these murders fall into. So, you know, I think Prevent has been not focused and not targeted in the right area, and potentially for the same reasons that we had the Rotherham rape gangs and you know, these because of fear of being seen to be racist.
It's a difficult. Look,
it's a difficult line for them to try.
Yeah. All of this is very challenging, but I do, as I say, find it quite astonishing that you can see stories like that.
Yeah. I mean, and as devastating as the outcome is of those people. Let's have a look at the Eye. Reeves blamed for UK inflation hike, and this is because of the national insurance rise.
It was always bound to happen. I think a bit of a surprise that inflation should rise, from 3.4% to 3.6% this week. It doesn't help the Chancellor at all. Again, with that budget coming up later on in the year, that's going to be a difficult one already. The other bit of it, as it says there, is that, you know, the food price thing is something that people really see and feel. You know, it is astonishing for anybody going shopping when you look at how much you pay for food in particular in the shops. I think the other big consequence of it that I was looking at earlier on this evening is that anticipated drops in interest rates, which would help people's mortgages, may not actually happen as quickly as they would have. Now,
because of these inflation numbers.
Yeah, absolutely, because, you know, high interest rates, you know, are one of the tools that you use to keep inflation down. That having been said, if there is some kind of success that you can at least in part attribute to Rachel Reeves and to Starmer's government, it's been the, you know, slight drop over the piece since they came to office in interest rates.
Yeah, I mean, I know from my own experience that I try to stick to the same monetary budget of food every week when I do my shopping. And what I've noticed is I've gone from, 2 of those delivery, because I get my stuff delivered, because I hate going shopping, but the 2 of those baskets down to 1 now. Everything I buy for the same amount of money fits into 1 of those delivery baskets now.
I mean, look, I do a lot of shopping. I like going to the shops and buying the food for the house, but you cannot get away from, certainly in the last couple of years, the astronomical increases in food prices, around basic food items, never mind anything else. I mean, I find that, even if you're going into the office now, and this is, again, more generally, and you want to buy a cup of coffee for yourself and one of your colleagues, you're talking about, what, £7 or something?
You want to try doing it in London, it's double that.
Sure.
It's nearly double that.
Yeah, I mean, how can, it's difficult for, ordinary families to be able to feed their families, right, in these situations. I'm astonished at how quickly food prices have risen and still continue to rise every time you go to the shops.
The only food budget that I don't limit is for my pets. They eat better than I do, so I always make sure that they've got their food. But it is getting, even that is going up in price as well. It is an absolute shocker. Right, The Guardian. 4 MPs lose Labour whip. We've gone through that. The attack on Damascus. Doctors hail babies born with DNA of 3 people.
I thought this was a great story. I mean, basically using groundbreaking technology, I think, developed by the Newcastle University. They've created embryos using IVF with the DNA of 3 people, which means that incurable diseases in the babies that are born can be eradicated. 8 babies, I think, they're talking about where this has actually happened so far. It's an amazing story, right? And just shows how far this kind of IVF technology has come.
That is extraordinary, isn't it? The mothers were all high risk for passing on life-threatening diseases. So they've mixed in extra DNA to make sure that the babies don't contract those diseases.
Great story.
Wow, extraordinary. Yeah, really, really interesting. Right, let's take a break and then we'll come back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk. It's Petrie and John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, going through Thursday's newspapers. John, I've got the Sun and the Daily Mail in front of me, just because they've got the identical story on the front page. Afghans 1 billion blunder compo is the Sun's take on it, and the Mail is, thanks for saving us, now we will sue you. But as far as I'm concerned, this is about people suing who aren't safe, so I'm not sure that they have been rescued. But this is to do with the 100,000 Afghans that have been left at risk of death from the Taliban.
It's suggesting that law firms are signing up claimants who've been affected by this, who could each receive up to £250,000 in compensation because of this mistake. And in total, that would leave taxpayers with a bill of £1 billion. Interesting that both the Sun and the Daily Mail have got that story. But, you know, yet another ramification result of this mistake.
Yeah.
One mistake, right, where somebody appears in the Ministry of Defence to have attached something to looks like an email.
Ended up on Facebook.
Yeah. Amazing.
And the Taliban already have it. They've said we've already got the list. But that's a misleading. I think that's a misleading headline from the Mail. Thanks for saving us, now we'll see you, because this is really, it says deeper into the piece, as I suspected, that these are people who've applied for sanctuary but haven't got it, so therefore are still in danger.
Absolutely.
Of being murdered. The Sun, just very quickly at the top near the flag, have said MasterChef will be aired, and I can only imagine that's this mysterious series that has been filmed that they didn't know, BBC didn't know whether they were going to bin it or show it. The Sun seem to have got the exclusive that say they're going to show it.
No doubt with warnings around about it or something. Right?
Probably.
It probably costs, well, you know, I don't know how many episodes are in a series of MasterChef, but probably quite a few. And, you know, would cost a lot of money to make, maybe money for such a popular programme that any broadcasting company can't really afford to lose.
Well, they've got the resale as well, haven't they, of it? Yep. They sell it into around the world.
Yep.
Wow. Well, yeah, I don't know how they're going to get away with that, but there we go. The Mirror has also gone with a MasterChef story. This time is John Turode, stars fury at the BBC, sous chef, which is quite clever, using the word sue, as in suing somebody, not as in sous chef. But he found out online that he was going to be sacked. I mean, that's not on, is it?
Well, yeah, but he's also going to keep his programme that he's now got on ITV with Lisa Faulkner, his wife. So quite a lot of publicity for that programme.
Yeah. Oh, you are a cynical man, John. Extraordinary. Yeah, that's the Mirror. This is interesting. The Metro have gone with this story, and I'm glad that somebody has, because I'm sort of doing mental gymnastics with this story. So Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison at the moment for 20 years for her part in the trafficking of young women for Jeffrey Epstein and his friends. She therefore had a list of these things. Now that the Trump administration is saying there is no list, there is nothing to see here, or there might be a list, but it's a hoax put together by the Democrats, then Ghislaine Maxwell is innocent. If it's not true, then why is she still in prison?
Yeah, well, I mean, she wants the documents to be released, and now Trump, who wanted the documents to be released, doesn't want the documents to be released. I mean, there's quite an interesting read over here. We started off the hour looking at the Washington Post, and the Washington Post had on its front page in the corner a story about how there's a big split amongst the Republicans now in the United States about whether this should be published or not. The Speaker, who of of course, is what the third most powerful politician, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is saying that the documents should be published, and they should be published in full and let the public decide. But, you know, Trump is out there saying that, oh, well, bits of them could be published.
Yeah, well, I wonder which bits will be redacted. I mean, this is the point. There's no trust, is it? You know, Kash Patel, FBI, you've got Pam Bondi. I mean, she said the list was on her desk. Then she said, no, I didn't mean the list was on my desk. There is no list. Then Donald Trump says there is no list. And then Donald Trump said, well, there is a list, but it's been faked. It's a hoax put together by the Democrats. Therefore, you know, all of this adds up to Ghislaine Maxwell cannot be guilty of something if nothing happened.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a fair point. We'll all have the opportunity of asking the President all of these questions when it comes to both Ayrshire and Aberdeen in the next couple of weeks.
Do you think that you'll get the opportunity to interview him, John?
Well, look, the last time but one, I think he came to Scotland. No, maybe just before that, actually. He came to Scotland to both Turnberry and Aberdeen. I think it was the day after Brexit. I remember being there and running around the Aberdeen golf course, where he did 3 impromptu press conferences, having had a Keystone Cops chase on golf carts around the golf course. And I've never seen anything like it. He took every question from everybody. It was just, you know, these things are usually organised. This was just
chaos. But he might take a question, but he answers a different question. He doesn't ever answer the question that he's been asked. But if you do just call him Daddy.
Well, I'd rather not, to be honest.
Well, it might work. It worked for Mark Rutte.
Well, sure.
If you go, Daddy, can I interview you? Maybe he'll allow it. I don't know. It's a mess, isn't it? It's either true or it isn't true. It's either a hoax that's been faked by the Democrats, or it doesn't exist. Or I don't know. We will never find the truth. We will never see the truth of that ever. One of the stories that you picked, though, John, is Sandy Peggy.
Well, yeah, an astonishing day. We've all been waiting in Scotland for months now for the resumption of the Employment Tribunal, where Sandy Peggy, a nurse, is at that Employment Tribunal, really against her health board, because basically she was in a changing room in the Kirkcaldy Victoria Hospital, and that was shared with a trans person called Dr. Upton, and she objected to that. She was then one, subjected to disciplinary investigation about it, and 2, you know, she went to the Employment Tribunal about this. Now, what happened late last night, announced this morning, was basically the health board caved in and said that she was cleared of any disciplinary charges. That was released about 8 o'clock this morning. They then went along to the tribunal at 10 o'clock, and the tribunal is still continuing. But it's all looking very, very messy for the health board. And if it's looking very, very messy for the health board, that means it's looking very messy for the Scottish government. It's kind of a bit akin, this case, to what happened with the Darlington nurses south of the border, though this happened obviously with Sandy Peggy first. But, you know, this is a nurse who's got 30 years service with the NHS and Fife. She's been subjected to this for the past 18 months. She's last night got, you know, one leg of it sorted, and we'll see how the next bit goes. But it's a pretty amazing story. But, you know, that last minute cave-in last night by the health board was certainly unexpected, but the case in the Employment Tribunal still goes on.
Yeah, so presumably the tribunal is continuing on the basis of figuring out what compensation that she might get. Because why would it continue if she's been found not
two
guilty,
separate
if you like.
two separate processes, right? You know, she's been found in the case of the disciplinary to really have no questions really to answer, but she's the person who's taken the health board to the employment tribunal, so it's a different process.
Right.
So we'll see where this ends up.
It's very interesting, and just the nuances as well of Scottish law and the way that it's done north of the border. But she's been cleared of the hate incident, which is that she didn't want to change with a trans woman in front of her. So that's been dropped, but the tribunal continuing is just quite baffling to me.
Yep.
Just odd. A crackdown on international students. This is another Times story that you've picked.
This is Sadiq Khan saying that government plans for a levy on international students. They want to put 6% on fees paid by international students, really I think it's part of the immigration proposals that the government has. Sadiq Khan in London is saying this is a bad idea in London. All sorts of universities and higher education institutions will be against this across the whole of the country, because without the large number of international students that we get, never mind the goodwill and everything else that comes with that in future, without those international students, it makes their universities a lot less viable than they are. And if the universities are a bit less viable than they are, then that's going to have a knock-on effect, not just in the institutions themselves and the number of staff, etc., but probably the number of domestic students that they can actually afford to have in their institutions.
Well, and also, of course, foreign students pay a good deal more for those courses, so they're equal to several British students. But I think that the public minds the students coming over. I think the public minds the students overstaying or opting out of the course and wandering off and getting a job.
Look, part of I understand that point of view. In the meantime, though, the other thing that we need to consider is that with this many students is a lot of income, right, for the entire economy.
Yeah, true.
Edinburgh, for example, Glasgow, both cities that I know very well, have thousands and thousands of students, and they provide a huge boost to the local economies as well.
Yeah, absolutely, they do. John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. I'll see you very soon. John Boosman, their political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Now, though, it is over to you. We are going to be talking about domestic violence and why it is that it is increasing. Why is there so much violence at home now? What do you think is the trigger? If you've been subjected to domestic violence, do you have any clues as to why that was happening? Why the abuse was happening? If you were or have been an abuser, I'd love to hear from you. I don't know whether you'll call, but I would appreciate a call just to explain to me why it is you became an abuser. So that would be really interesting to me. But on the whole, I just want to talk about this awful situation.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. This is Petrie, and I'm with you now all the way through until 1 o'clock. And this is a full hour of phone-in. And I want to talk to you about domestic abuse or domestic violence, whichever term you prefer. In the UK, around 2.4 million adults experienced domestic abuse in the year ending March 2022, with 1.7 of those being women, 1.7 million being women, and 699,000 men that have been affected by domestic violence. 1 in 4 people aged 16 and over have experienced domestic abuse since that age. This translates to an estimated 12.6 million people. So 1 in 4 of us have been subjected to some form of domestic abuse. The term domestic abuse does cover financial abuse, psychological abuse, and of course physical abuse as well. And there's a proposed new law to come into Scotland. It's going through Parliament, the Scottish Parliament at the moment, which is looking at least one arm of those. I spoke earlier on to a judge who was saying, look, you know, we're going to go for the most obvious, the violence, because if we can open it up to violence first, physical violence, then, you know, maybe we can expand it to include financial abuse and psychological abuse. I was in an abusive relationship, and although it wasn't physical in terms of that sort of violence, but it's very difficult to explain, because a lot of people would say, well, only weak people get sucked into domestically violent situations, and I'm not a weak person by any stretch of the imagination, but I was living in a foreign country. He was my partner. You know, I was isolated more from friends and family, you know, all of those things. I was working, he wasn't, and so he was in charge of the sort of domestic arrangements, if you like, and I was a size 6 at the time. I'm a size 12 now, so you know, I was a size 6. I was tiny. I was so thin, and he would limit my food and all of those things. And it wasn't until my boss at the time, I was working as a TV presenter, and my boss at the time said, look, we've got people who are concerned about you, because I've had people stopping me in the shops and asking if you've got cancer. I mean, that's how skinny I was, that's how ill I was. And they sort of mounted I was the only female in the newsroom, a reporter, and all the boys mounted an intervention, and anyway, the rest of it is history. But it was abusive, and you know, there's various different forms it can take, and I would want to see that form of abuse also being considered as a violent and dangerous form of abuse. But Scotland perhaps isn't ready for that yet. They want to pull together a register of domestic abusers. They're similar to the sex offenders register, which won't be made public, but it would mean that the police would keep informed of abusers. Would have to tell police every time they move. They would have to give them their passport details. It would require schools to educate pupils on domestic abuse, because if you've been brought up in an abusive household, then you may grow up to believe that's just the way it is. That's the way everybody lives, isn't it? If that's been your experience of childhood. So they'd want to educate pupils on domestic abuse and healthy relationships. That should be really part of education anyway. Additionally, it would place a data collection duty on Police Scotland, the Crown Office, and the Procurator Fiscal Services, service and charities working with victims of domestic abuse, and an annual reporting duty on the Scottish Government. Meanwhile, here in England, the government is not learning lessons from the deaths of domestic abuse victims. This is what reports have found. The voices of women who've been killed have not been heard. Deeply concerning lack of oversight in England and Wales amid a failure to act on recommendations made after a victim's death. You know, we always hear this, lessons will be learned, we're going to learn from this, we're going to make sure this can't happen again. Well, they're not. Well, we know that. We know that. One woman a week in England and Wales is killed by her partner or her ex-partner. And that number is not going down, right? The numbers of people who are domestically abused are going up. I'm just intrigued as to what triggers it. What is the trigger for domestic abuse? What is the trigger? I know what the trigger was in my situation. I know exactly what caused that. And that was that my partner didn't feel like he was in control of anything because I was earning the money. I've done a lot of thinking about this, a lot of soul searching, that I was in control of the money and I was in control of, stuff like that. And so the only thing he could be in control of was me. And that's what caused that. So that seemed to me to be fairly textbook. So is it that? Is it, in your case, when you were abused, do you think it was that your partner felt like they were losing control? Maybe they'd lost a job, maybe they were turned to drinking or to alcohol. What is it that triggers somebody who you love, who loves you, certainly at some point, right, to abuse? What is it that flips that? What is it that takes... Was the person always abusive and then, I don't know, just got bored of you and then began abusing you? Or was there something else that triggered that? I mean, especially people who get married, right? They've made a statement to each other. They love each other. They've decided they're going to be together until divorce do us part. So what is it that takes that union of two people who've made that decision and suddenly it becomes violent? It can't always be that the person who is violent has always been violent, right? Because otherwise that might trigger earlier, or you might have a red flag or two about it. So why? Why does it happen? Maybe it's too difficult a question, I don't know. But if you've got any theories, any at all, I'd like to hear them. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you straight back. You can also text, put the word talk and then your message to 87222, and you can send a WhatsApp as well, or a short voice note to the same number, 0344 499 1000. Right, let's get to your calls now. And Sue has called from Spain. Hello, Sue.
Hello, Petrie. Good evening.
Good. How are you? All right?
Yeah. Bit hot over here at the moment.
Oh, it's nice and cool here at the moment.
I'm jealous.
It won't be long till we're jealous of you again. Don't worry about it. Sue, talk to me. Talk to me about your experience.
Well, I was in a domestic abuse relationship for over 12 years.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people, you've mentioned so much in your introduction that I couldn't agree more with. It's 100% agreement. That you do get the odd red flag at the beginning. My ex was a complete control freak.
Right.
When we first started dating, we'd got tickets to go and see George Benson. I'm going back to the 1980s now.
Right.
And he was jealous that I was talking to someone else, and he took the tickets, and then I didn't hear from him for weeks, and I was brokenhearted. And then he came back, and then we moved to Germany, where we both worked on an American airbase. And of course, I didn't know anyone there. So you mentioned the question of being isolated. I had nowhere to go to.
Yeah.
So, you put up with it. I'd taken some money over with me from a car that I'd sold to get a car myself. I easily got a job. And after I'd been there about 3 months and I, was no longer dependent on him for getting me to work and getting me home. I said, could I have the money for the car? And he said, well, what do you think you've been living on for the last 3 months? So that was where it started.
Right.
And then it was really control. And it tends to happen more to women that are more intelligent than their partners. And as you so correctly said, they can't control you.
Yeah.
If you get into an argument with them, you will come out with reasonable points that they cannot accept.
It's really interesting though, Sue, isn't it? Because a lot of people, I mean, I've done the phone-ins on abuse over the years that I've been doing this job, over the decades I've been doing this job. And there's always a certain cohort of usually men who say, you know, it's weak people who get abused.
It isn't. It's the strong ones.
People can't see that. Because they wear you down bit by bit by bit, though, don't they? It's so it's so tiny you don't even notice it yourself.
It starts off with, "Oh, you're lucky you've got me. Nobody else would want you."
Mm.
And comments like that, or you put an outfit on, and "Oh, you're not wearing that going out, are you?"
Just the subtle, slight undermining you at points. Yeah.
Yeah, and it over time, over a few years, it dents your confidence. Now, I've lived in Spain since those days. We moved from Germany back to the UK and then 6 months later to Spain. And then I had a much better job than him. And he was totally jealous the whole time. And I used to have to work a lot of hours. So there were occasions I came home from work and every glass in the house had been smashed. He'd spray paint "you bitch" on the wall in black spray paint. I had a broken arm, a broken nose.
You say you stayed with him for 12 years.
Yeah, I was terrified to leave.
So you were scared? You were scared to leave, or you didn't have anywhere to leave to, or you didn't have the money to leave, or?
I was terrified he was going to kill me because that's what he told me.
If you left?
Yes. And I went to the police, and in those days, particularly in Spain, although they took photographic evidence of the bruising and things like that, they said, well, just go back home now, it's a domestic. So I don't think there's an increase in it, Petrie. I think it's always been around, but it's finally getting the recognition that it should.
And did you, by 12 years, have children as well?
No, I refused to have children.
Good.
Because I knew that would be an inextricable link for the rest of my life. So yes, I'm childless.
And how did you? What was the point at which, during the 12 years, that you just went, right, this, no more of this. I can't do this anymore.
You'll understand this. I had 2 dogs, and I got thrown out one New Year's Eve after he'd created a scene with his parents at a restaurant, and he wanted my car. He's had a few drinks. I wouldn't give him the keys. So he fought, got the keys off me, and me and my 2 dogs got thrown out. I just had a pair of knickers on, into the street. And I vowed then that I would rather spend the rest of my life on my own than to put up with what I was putting up with.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I said earlier on in the programme that when you live with an abuser, you dread going home, or you dread them coming home. You know, the key in the lock, and you just think, oh, what mood are they going to be in? What's going to happen now?
If he went out later than me, and we didn't have telephones in those days, so it wasn't a question of ringing, I'm on my way home. So trying to keep the peace, I would have a meal ready every night. And he'd turn up with a few drinks. If I said, where have you been? I was nagging. And if I didn't say anything, I was sulking.
And you never know what's going to kick them off, right?
No idea at all. No idea at all.
And it can be saying nothing, like you said, or it can be saying hello in the wrong tone, or it can be anything.
Yeah. Oh, where have you been? As simple as that.
Yeah. And people don't understand that unless you've lived with it, that knot in your stomach the whole time.
Yes. Yeah. That's the worst bit, the anxiety. And eventually I set my own business up because I would put the mortgage in the bank, which was a joint account, and he'd go in the next morning and he'd draw the mortgage out. So we ended up with mortgage arrears, money that I paid into the bank for the electricity. Again, there weren't computers. It took a week to find out why you didn't have enough money in your bank account. And he'd been writing checks. And you feel a bit of a fool in the bank. The bank couldn't help me. They said it's a joint account. So my first stroke of freedom was to go to the bank across the road and explain what was happening. And they said, right, what we'll do is we'll open you up your own account, and it'll only cost you a few pesetas, as it was peseta days, and we will send that money to the mortgage company. And it came to a head the New Year's Eve with his parents were staying in an apartment on the complex, and his stepfather got him out of the house. But it persisted for a good 6 months afterwards. He followed me. He trashed my car. He took a key to every panel on it, broke every window in it. So even when I was at work, I was getting phone calls. He was up at the house, taking the microwave, my jewellery, my clothes. You go to the police, they say, well, it's a joint-owned house.
Yeah.
So we can't stop him. He's got permission to be in there.
And what's it like now? Where is he now? What's going on?
Well, the reason, this is the first time I've ever spoken about it, Petrie, in full.
Oh, Sue.
Because I found out just before Christmas. He died 2 years ago, just after COVID.
Wow, so you're finally free, basically. You can talk about it now.
Yeah, it was his cousin that had been to the wedding that tracked me down via Facebook.
How did you feel when you found out?
A relief.
Really?
Yeah.
Was there always a chance that he could come back?
Oh, yes. Yes. I had another relationship after him about a year later. Wasn't a serious one. And we came back and I could see my mother-in-law's car outside the complex. And I got nervous. And the guy said, do you want me to stay tonight? And I said, yes. So he took the dogs out for me. And the next morning he said, oh, it was a national holiday here, but I've got a job to finish. Can I borrow the car? And I said, yes. And he came back 5 minutes later and he said, you won't believe it. And I said, my car's smashed, isn't it?
Oh, gosh.
So we went to the police. They weren't very happy. It was Spanish Christmas Day. But I had one huge stroke of luck, and I'll never be able to thank this lady enough. I phoned the airport. And, of course, nowadays there's no way this could be done. But I explained the situation to her. And she said, well, I can't give you any information about flights that passengers are travelling on. But I can give you information about flights that people aren't travelling on. Where would he be flying to? And I said, oh, Gatwick or Heathrow. So she went through all the flight ones. No, he's not on that. He's not on that. And we got to about 6, 7 o'clock at night. And she said, sorry, can't give you the information on that one, but he's not on the next flight.
Oh, wow.
So I was able to go to the police and actually say what flight he was on. And I found out 3 years later that they did indeed arrest him. And that was over the car. That wasn't over domestic abuse. That was criminal damage to the car. So people weren't considered.
No, I just think it is never really. It's always considered, like you say, oh, it's just them indoors. You know, it's not. It's not. It can't be that serious. And I think that is the issue. Sue, I'm so grateful I'm incredibly touched that you decided to give me a call and tell me your story, and I'm really pleased that you're well and happy. I'm just going to take a quick break, but then when I come back, I have got a call from somebody who says that they were an abuser.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and we're talking about domestic abuse, and I'm forever fascinated as to what the trigger might be to turn somebody from a once loving partner into somebody who is an abuser. And I did ask for anybody who was an abuser, has been an abuser, if they would call. I really didn't think anybody would, to be honest with you, but I'm really pleased to tell you that I have had a call from somebody who claims that they were once an abuser, and that is Carl. Hello, Carl. Hello, Carl.
Can I just say before we start how much I want to appreciate and give my appreciation to Sue that called in just now, how brave she was. That was such a soul-destroying story.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
As somebody on the other side, to hear the impact that somebody and the behaviour that I used to do that has on somebody, it's heartbreaking. And she was so brave.
Well, I think you're brave, actually, and fairly impressive for admitting what you've done in the past. Tell me your story.
Okay, so I was... Okay, so we'll start from the beginning. So I was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. So alcoholism took a huge thing. A certain bit of narcissism. So anybody in an abusive relationship, it boils down to two things. It's substance abuse or it's narcissism. That's the only two things. Mm. You can sit there and give it I wasn't loved as a child, blah, blah, blah. There's no excuse to treat another human being the way you were treated. It should give you a reason to treat somebody better. So I was controlling.
In what way? How did it start? How did it start? So presumably you have a partner that you love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was massively in love. We got married, and then the ego comes in. Other people are looking at your wife, and then because you would think I'm talking for myself. So if I was looking at another woman, then I would sit there and go, oh yeah, and so you'd expect every man to look at your wife that way, and then why wouldn't she be doing that while you're at work, and then that creeps in. No fault of my wife at all. She wasn't doing anything wrong, but it was in my head, well, if I'm thinking that, why wouldn't you be thinking that? And if you're not thinking that, and that starts to take in to control, then financial control as well. You're controlling spending.
So you were the breadwinner, and she was stay at home, right? Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. We had kids. So she was doing everything a mother should do, and I should have respected her for doing all of that, but I didn't. And it was what you're doing. You're not tidying the house up for 12 hours a day. So what you're doing for 4 hours a day, you must be doing something else. And it's horrible.
So were you aware? So it starts off small, right? It starts off with little comments that you would have made, and little behaviours, and questioning the shopping bill or how long she took at the shops or things like that. Did you not recognise that in yourself at the time?
No, because it creeps up, if that makes sense. So it's not all one thing all at once. It's just creepy, and then you get some niggle in your head, and then you take it out on your partner, and it's their fault. It's not your fault. How can it be your fault? And obviously, drinking didn't help. I was drinking heavily when I was married. Thankfully, now I'm off. I'm clean now from drink and things like that.
Well done.
And but we had kids. The kids, and this is the awful thing. The kids have to go through this as well. So,
so would you kind of undermine her in front of the children as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd undermine her in front of guests, little snide comments and things like that. Because I always had to be the person that was, important in the room. And if
so, a lot of insecurity.
Massive insecurity. Yes.
Yeah.
It's and this is where abusive relationships come in. Anybody that's going through an abusive relationship, I can tell you now, it's not your fault. It's the other person's fault. The abusers, it's them that has the security. Get away. There are numbers you can phone, and there are people that can help to get you away. And if you feel like you're in that situation, get away very fast, because
it only gets worse.
This day and age, it can go very badly. But yeah.
So you started off by undermining her in public. You'd undermine her to the children, all of that.
Things like, you're putting on some weight. You're not as skinny as you used to be, and things like that. And
that's what I got. I was a size 6. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you call it fat shaming now, don't you? So little comments, things like that. Why you put so much makeup on? You don't need to go out. You don't do anything all day. Why are you putting makeup on?
Yeah, I used to get. I don't know why you're tired, because of what you do for a living. I was presenting a program, which he never watched, by the way. That was another part of the control. He would never put the television on and watch what I did. But it was always like, "Why are you tired? You're just sitting there talking."
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
Yep, and it will be, if it's okay to mention, the bedroom situation. If the partner's not interested, it's a slight on you then, and then that becomes something that is used as a form of control as well.
Yeah. Again, I was told that if I was thinner, sex would be better.
Yep. I've used that one. It's quite difficult, actually. I like to think I'm reformed a little bit now. Well, a lot, not a little bit, but
hard to talk about, though.
Yeah, it is. I was physically abusive as well.
How did that start?
There was one instance. My stepdad came round to the house one evening. I was at work, and I didn't know he was going to show up. And then my neighbour said, "Oh, your dad was around," and the wife didn't mention it. I said, "Why didn't you mention my dad was around?" I was like, "What are you doing?" And it just ended up in a not very nice situation.
So you physically attacked her?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fists?
Because my insecurity, I thought that she was sleeping with my dad.
Yeah.
But
was it immediately a full-on attack, or were you in?
No, it was just like I think it started with it's really embarrassing to say, but I think it started with a slap.
Right.
Around the face, and I'm deeply regretful of all of these actions.
No, I know you are, and I'm sorry I'm pushing you, Carl, and bringing back these horrible memories.
No.
It's just for me, what's interesting is this escalation that people don't see coming. That they think, oh well, that was just a slap. You're very apologetic afterwards. It'll never happen again. But you've got away with it.
I did all of that. I did all of that, and she was like, "Yeah, that's fine." And when my dad came round, I actually accused my dad in front of my wife at the time. Why are you coming around to my house with me not being here? I'm at work. You have no business being. I've come to see my grandkids. I didn't see that as a legitimate answer, and I actually attacked my dad as well. Physically.
And how quickly did it escalate from that original slap?
I would say very quickly, because once you get the apology, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, I should have told you about it, then that gives you, as an abuser, justification. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
And then because of that, it made it easier to do it again and again and again and again. And I'm deeply horrified by my actions.
How, when you said you did it again and again and again, each time presumably getting a little bit worse because you felt a little bit more emboldened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What was the very pinnacle of your violence?
Had an ambulance called out because I pushed my ex-wife down the stairs and she injured her back, and they had to come and stretch her out and go to A&E, and then she made excuses at the A&E. She could have reported me there and then and said, "You pushed me down the stairs," and I would have been arrested, put in jail, rightly so, but she didn't. So for me at that time, at that period of time, that was justification.
Yeah.
She'd accepted that she'd done something wrong.
Right.
And I think a lot of people that go through abuse that's how they feel. They feel that they deserve it, or they've done something to deserve it. And I'm telling you now, everybody listening, please, you haven't done anything to deserve this. Please, if you are a victim of this, report it and get your abuser arrested and get out. And the police...
Because you could have killed her down those stairs, right? That you could have killed her.
Oh, absolutely. It could have gone. It could have gone much worse. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're talking 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
So it's not recent.
What ended this toxic relationship? Or your behaviour within it? I don't know if it's still with them.
So the toxic behaviour didn't stop. She left. We got divorced. And then about 15 years ago, I had a really bad episode with the drinking and did something not quite nice to a friend of mine, and almost went to jail. And that was a turning point then. I got rehab and stuff, and that basically saved my life.
Mm. And potentially somebody else's, right?
Yeah. It didn't save the people that came before me and before that. But since then, touch wood, I've been clean. But it's been a long journey, and I know the things I've done wrong, and I can sit there and, like I'm doing tonight, and I'm quite happy to sit there and say, I was an abusive partner. I did cause somebody physical harm, and they had no reason to undergo that. My kids witnessed it, and they had no reason to witness that. And I was not a very nice person. And that's putting it bluntly. I'm being quite polite about it. I do it on radio, so I can't swear.
I think to be able to admit it in the way that you just owned the whole thing, that is very powerful. It's very powerful, and it is credit to you.
I've caused so much pain to so many people, and if I can send a message on your radio station to the women that are going through this, that it's not their fault, it's us, the abusers. It's because we've got insecurities, we've got narcissistic tendencies, and it's not your fault. Get away. And for anybody that is being an abuser, just go and get help.
Yeah.
Because you need it. And so I don't want any accolade or anything like that.
No, it isn't an accolade. It's just a recognition that you've come a long way. And I think that to be able to admit it and to come on to a public station like this and to a radio station and talk as honestly as you have, and I genuinely appreciate it, because we don't hear the voice of the abuser, because most abusers are too cowardly to do what you've just done. So what you've done, if it saves just one life, right? Somebody could be listening to this and it could save a life.
If I can save one life tonight, I would be more than happy to do that. And
well, I appreciate you, Carl. I really do, genuinely. I think that was an incredibly brave thing, a very brave thing to do. Victim support numbers now, victimsupport.org.uk, 0808 1689 111, 1689 111. I'll give you more after the break.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is Talk and it's Petrie here. And wow, what a call just then from Carl, who admitted to being a violent domestic abuser. And I do have respect for that. Not for what he's done, clearly, but for just calling and letting us know. And also, you know, if you are in a domestic abuse situation, and I know you can't call, and I know you can't do anything about it, but please get help. Please get help. If I hadn't been rescued by my fellow journalists, I honestly don't know where I would be right now. And so if somebody reaches out to you, or you can reach out to somebody, please get some help. I've got another line for you here. National Domestic Abuse Helpline.org.uk. The phone number is 0808 2000 247. 0808 2000 247. And if you know, if you're a man and you're an abuser, or you are being abused, there's a line, mensadviceline.org.uk, and that number is 0808 8010 327. And we have all sorts of helplines as well on our website as well, so just go there, and there's lots of helpline numbers there too. So please get some help. Right, let's go back to the calls now, and Cindy is here from Michigan. Hello, Cindy. How are you?
Hey, Petrie. That last call was very powerful.
Incredible.
Carl is a brave man.
Yeah.
Carl, God bless you.
Yeah, I mean,
God
just
you.
having the guts and like just telling it as it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you've got a story to tell me.
Yeah, I do. 26 years ago, my first husband. Well, let me tell you, first of all, I grew up in a very violent household. My dad was an alcoholic, and he was extremely, he traumatized us. Every day, you know, we'd come home from school, and we felt like he was going to kill us. And, like, when we'd leave for school, he would tell us, you know, okay, get the F out. You know, who do you think you are? Just don't come back. And that was our have a good day for school, you know.
Wow.
So growing up like that, I think introduced me to a husband who would abuse me.
Yeah.
And so one day, and me having PTSD from growing up like that, I'm very like, if you get in my face, I'm already like, I'm traumatized. I'm triggered now. So now I'm gonna, if you hit me, I hit him back. So we ended up on the floor, and he was choking me, and I grabbed a lamp and hit him over the head with it so that he would stop. The police came, and they made buddy friends with him because he was a Marine. He was a tall, muscular Marine, and I'm 5'1". And because they buddied up with him, because they were in the military too, they saw me, and I had just come home from a job in the elevator at a gay bar. I used to entertain in the elevator, so for for fun, they would tip me in my blouse. These were gay men.
Right.
You know, there wasn't like, you know, they would tip me in my blouse because I was entertaining them in the elevator, because I was getting them ready to go up to the top floor at a bar. So when the police came, they saw me with a chest full of like $100 bills. They thought, okay, and then I had a tattoo, and the way I was dressed coming home from the bar that night, they took me to jail. I'm 5'1". This was a Marine, and they told me it was because he said that he wasn't choking me. He did not admit to that, but I told the truth and said I hit him over the head with a lamp. So they said they had to take me, but they made friends with him, and they thought maybe because of all those ones that I was either a hooker or a drug dealer. But the thing is that I thought it was okay, and I thought I deserved it. He also went on to, when he was away for 6 months, and in the military on a boat. So he had me live at my parents' house and not pay any rent and save his money. I couldn't spend a dime of it. And when he got back, I didn't know this. I later checked the bank statements when he left me. On Thanksgiving Day, he came back to tell me he was not coming back. I checked the bank statements, and he had been depleting the account the whole time, only year of our marriage. He depleted our account, and the money I was making was paying all the bills for us while we were together. And I didn't even know it because I trusted him with the finances. I thought we were married and this was going to be forever. So he took me for a very, very painful ride. I had no money at the end of it. I didn't know what I was going to do. My parents wouldn't lend me a dime, but they let me come home. But I stayed in that house. I scrapped the change that I had, and some friends helped me, and somehow I got through it that last month. And he also, I found on the internet that he had a picture of him. He was an escort for males and females. He was posed in his military clothing with like dolphin shorts and a tight shirt that was military assigned with the flag in the background saying he was an escort. I sent it to the JAG, which was the military police, like lawyers. I sent all the facts that I had, but they never got back in touch with me because I had proof of all the money he took from me. Well, it was our money.
And he
left me with nothing.
He just disappeared.
He told me he was going to be in the field for a few months. So I thought, he's coming back. You know, nothing's wrong. He's out in the field. And he came back on ironically, because it was Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, he got out of my life. I was thankful for the UK who doesn't know what Thanksgiving is. It's a day of thanks that you give to be grateful for the things that you have. And now I look back and it was ironic. It's ironic to me that he said he was never coming back on Thanksgiving Day.
And how
took all the money.
The violence that he would perpetrate against you for any reason.
I was also responsible for it because when he got in my face and hit me, I hit him back. I didn't know how to de-escalate. And I thought growing up in that violence, again, with somebody telling me I was worthless every day, get the F out of the house, you are nothing. What the, just talking, yelling. I'm not even demonstrating, right, because I don't want to get blurred out of your, so I don't want to do anything like that. But my dad is now sober. My dad is now going to church all the time. So a lot of people don't believe in God, and that's fine, but it does help a lot of people going to church. It can change your life. It changed his. I'm now comfortable. I call him like every other day.
Wow, that is a turnaround.
In fact, I bother him a lot. I call him so much. He's like, oh my God, what do you want?
Well, that is a heck of that's a big turnaround and big of you to forgive him as well.
Yeah, I'm comfortable to talk to him on the phone. He's like almost alongside of my husband now. He's like one of my best friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
Again, credit to you and him, actually, because to forgive is an incredible ability. I'm not very good at forgiving.
It's a release. You release yourself of that pain and that, but I still feel it even now. Like I second guess myself a lot. I have low self-esteem.
Well, that's
very
not surprising.
low.
What happened to him? Do you know?
What happened to
your ex-husband?
Oh, I later got in touch with him about 5 years ago, and he wouldn't admit to what he had done. I thought he would come clean with a little bit of it, but he pretended like he didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah, he's never gonna grow.
That's a kind of crazy that is very special, Petrie. Very special, because you can't even come clean 20-something years later.
Yeah, that is a complete lack of growth and ability. He's definitely never going to be the man that Carl has turned himself into. Cindy, I'm so sorry you went through that. I really am. And thank you for sharing your story. I've just got to go because I've got to very quickly go to a break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and we're talking about domestic abuse, and I've just got time to squeeze in another call. This one's from Angelina, who's in Darlington. Morning, Angelina.
Good morning, Petrie. Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, you are welcome. I'm grateful for you for calling, because I know this is a really difficult phone in. Tell me your story.
Well, you've been talking about how, like, well, it's really difficult for me to say because I've got an absolutely amazing boyfriend now who's absolutely amazing. He's lovely, his family are amazing. But in the past life, I've had two men that actually raped me because I was actually really successful in my life. You know, I had plenty of money, I had 3 houses, I was renting them out, I was all the rest. And for some reason, they could not stand it. Instead of, like, enjoying...
It's because you made them feel inadequate. Not your fault, their fault.
Well, that's what I felt at the time, but I never said that. I didn't even want to say that because...
And that's what the rape is about. It wasn't about sex, it's about controlling you. It's about punishing you.
Yeah, and this is what I say to people who have been raped now. I mean, I can't work anymore now. I have a MS and what have you, and I care for 2 people as well at the same time, so it's a little bit difficult. But you know, like it was like, well, you're useless. You're useless now. You can't move. You can't do this. You can't do that. And it's like, well, actually, I can actually still think.
Yeah. I mean, it's just wicked, isn't it, that somebody wants to drag you down because you're more successful than them. And that is it's pathetic of them, but they know they've got the physical strength. They know they've got that over us, if nothing else.
I absolutely thought that your phone-in tonight was absolutely brilliant, and I did last night and the night before because I'm having trouble sleeping at the moment.
Oh, I'm glad we're keeping you company. That's what I'm here for.
So I've been like, just sleep. Well, not sleeping, but like just enjoying the phone-ins. But yeah, but I don't think all men are like that.
No, absolutely not. No. Well, as you said, you've got a great relationship now, and you know, I know fabulous blokes, but it's just a real tragedy that there are some that cannot cope with a woman's success, and that was certainly the case in your case, Angelina. That to me is as obvious